All right. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the I Love Annuities podcast. I am Jeremiah Conger here with Zachary Van Ness, and we are your Annuity Dudes. Today, we're tackling a misconception so critical that it could literally determine your quality of life in retirement. Zach, most people think that retirement planning is just financial planning, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, 100%. And in our working years, we're really working to accumulate wealth and to grow. So we're on that process of climbing that financial mountain. And retirement planning is more about safety, right? It's about that descent and safely navigating that descent. And it's all about the income, the preservation, and avoiding any type of catastrophic loss. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's research that shows the people that get injured the most, or when they get injured the most, when hiking, doing mountain hiking or mountain climbing, 80% of the injuries happen on the descent. So when they're already going down after reaching the peak. So it's a really cool analogy to really use here when it comes to financial and retirement planning. Financial planning's the ascent. That's when you're accumulating, saving, and growing your assets. And once you reach the peak, which is that day of retirement, now you're on the descent, and it's about taking those assets, converting them to income, and converting them to an overall plan that's going to allow them to last throughout the rest of your life. So think of retirement planning as the descending part of that mountain climbing analogy.
Yeah. And I know today's subject that we're really going to focus on with that planning for that retirement are 5 shocking truths about retirement. And we'll hit on those key points and a real quick overview just to lead you into today's subject. So we're going to cover retirement, which may last 20 to 30 years longer than what was initially planned. Number 2 is the healthcare costs around retirement, and those healthcare costs tend to be more than what we expect. Third is the sequence of returns, which can really devastate anyone's portfolio. We've talked about sequence of returns before, so we'll hit on that a little bit more today. Fourth is that most advisors that we're working with, investment advisors, are not specialized in retirement planning, specifically retirement income planning and setting it up for a long term. Most often we find that they're focused on that growth aspect. And fifth, and certainly not least, most important, is the guaranteed income, and that guaranteed income might actually be the most valuable asset, not necessarily your investments. So we'll talk about these today more in depth.
Yeah, and if you've noticed the theme of our episode, including our interlude music or whatever you want to call it, was a James Bond themed, instrumental. And the episode here is titled "The 5 Shocking Truths About Retirement That You Must Know," but we also are titling it "The License to Spend." And later on in this episode, we're going to discuss some research that was conducted by Michael Fink of the American College of Finance. And he wrote an article that was titled "License to Spend." So we're going to touch on the key points there to bring everybody up to speed on his findings when it comes to researching retirement and retirement income planning and the most optimal way to approach that from a few different angles. So, but in our first segment here, let's talk about retirement planning versus financial planning. I think
can we first talk about, sorry to cut you off.
No worries.
How important it is that we use James Bond, because I'm a James Bond geek. So like when you came up with the idea of the license to spend and referencing Michael Fink, I was so stoked. And I realized this goes way back to, if I remember right, late 60s when it started, early 70s. Those are my favorite ones. When you go back to the old guys, they're some of the best. Now Daniel Craig is falling off the James Bond train here, unfortunately. But man, I was beyond excited when you came up with this. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I had no idea that you were such a James Bond nerd, but
Dude,
glad
love
glad
it.
to learn something new about you. I've known you for, geez, I don't know what, 20 years now, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Learn something new every day.
That's it, man.
But what do you
All right.
think of
Now we
our
can
little
get into the
graphic here?
subject if
We
you
look
really
like some
want.
handsome dudes there in those tuxedos.
Right?
Cool, man. Well, yeah, absolutely. Happy to do this episode. We're trying to add some candor and, some, you know, fun and comedy, if you will, in a way, to these episodes, because let's face it, a lot of the crap out there that you can find on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast, when you're talking about financial stuff, it can be very boring. Very, it's like listening to, nails on a chalkboard, right? But we're trying to add a little bit more fun to it, just to make it more engaging. So hopefully everybody's enjoying that out there. And if you are, please, do us a favor, give us a thumbs up or a like and share, or even comment on what you think about the show so far. We're trying to do a banner job here, and we're only going to get better. So please excuse us for any of the things that we're doing that maybe aren't as up to par. But let's get into our first segment here, and that's retirement planning versus financial planning. There's a very big difference here between the two. And a lot of times, and oftentimes, people get confused by them. And what we find is that most people aren't aware of the differences. So let's just make it crystal clear here that financial planning during your working years involves things like asset allocation, risk tolerance, saving strategies, and even growing your wealth. Ultimately, in the financial planning stage, you're building your nest egg.
Yeah. And the shift that happens here is that it's no longer a point at which we're really trying to beat the markets and we're trying to outperform and outgrow. I think you can attest to the conversations that we have today is how do I sustain? How do I maintain? How do I give myself an income that I can rely on month in and month out? And really, we start to see that shift happen in preserving wealth, creating guaranteed income, and planning for expenses like healthcare. Because as much as we've heard before, earlier in retirement, plan on traveling a lot. So all of my expenses are going to be front loaded when it comes to retirement. I think we've
Yeah.
found over time that that's not the case.
Yeah, retirement planning is a completely different ballgame, and it includes all of the things you just mentioned. And ultimately, the reason of why those shifts happen or need to happen in such a dramatic fashion is because the risk landscape is totally different. I mean, we're talking about entering a new phase of life that you've never gone on before, a new phase of life that you've never ever even probably fathomed before, because we get so caught in the day to day with working. I mean, we literally work more than half of our lives, and you get used to that income coming in from your employment or salaries or whatever, and you get used to building a lifestyle based on that income that's coming in. And that's where that dynamic shift ultimately occurs, is it starts with the income shift. The income now is having to be sourced once you enter this retirement phase from those assets that you've accumulated from that nest egg. That is where all of the risk lie. So ultimately, the risk landscape is totally different. And Zach, one reason that we found that most investment advisors struggle to make the leap to retirement planning is because of how different those risks are. They're not versed in how to mitigate those. And that they themselves, investment advisors who are helping people amass their wealth in the accumulation phase, the risks and the layout of those risks are completely different.
Yeah, 100%. And during the working years, we've got those times where we can ride those lows, and we still have that paycheck coming in. In retirement, we face risks like, market volatility, inflation, expenses like healthcare expenses. Once you start receiving that retirement income, there's the tax on that retirement income. And then I think the next point that we'll probably hit on here soon is just that longevity risk, how long we live and how that affects us with those assets we have accumulated. Are we prepared to live longer than expected?
Exactly. And, again, using that mountain climbing analogy, and that most accidents happen on the way up, on the way down. They don't happen on the way up. And so the descent in retirement can be treacherous if you're unprepared.
Yeah, 100% right. And hitting on some of that longevity risk, we call this the ultimate multiplier, is just that, oh gosh, what was it? Let me check my notes here. Society of Actuaries. Sorry. So longevity is the ultimate multiplier of all risk retirement. So according to Society of Actuaries, living just 5 or 10 years longer than planned exponentially increases the chance you'll face serious financial problems. And ideally, we want to live longer. We want to enjoy the time with our family, our loved ones, and our friends. But we don't want to feel the expense and the cost of that. We want to enjoy that time.
And I think initially, right, when people are entering this retirement phase, which they've coined somehow the golden years, right, of people's lives, everybody envisions just spending more time with family and spending more time with loved ones, or maybe even doing most of the hobbies that you've aspired to do in your life. Things like traveling. Um, I know I spoke to someone the other day that they built a custom like van and a conversion van, made it into like this RV type setup. And they're going to, this is a client of mine. He's actually traveling all over, and their goal is to visit all of the national parks in the country. So they're going to start out in like Alaska, and they're going to go through Canada and all that. But start out in Alaska, then they're going to come back and go to the Yellowstone and the Glacier National Park and all of that. And that's amazing. But guess what? Like that, all of those things cost money. Spending time with your family costs money, because you're going to want to be, spoiling your grandkids. You're going to be wanting to take them out for ice cream, or, treating your children and their children to dinner and things like that. So all of these things cost money. And I think when you're getting to that point of life and you're kind of looking forward to retirement, we don't really understand that now there's massive risks that are ahead of us that we must plan for and prepare for. And when people are really think about spending all that time doing the things they want to do in life, they don't realize that it's going to potentially even increase their expenses to a degree, at least within the first 10 years or so of retirement. They actually have broken it up. Again, going back to Tom Hegna, he's actually broken this retirement planning period of 30 years, and he breaks them up into 10-year segments. And he calls the first 10 years the go-go years. So the first 10 years that you retire, you're going to go. You're going to be on the go. You're going to be doing all the things that you want to do. You're still young. You're still healthy. And now you've got all the time in the world to go do the things you want to do. So those first 10 years might even end up being a bit more expensive than you envisioned, because you're treating every day like it's Saturday. You're eating out more. You're spending a bit more. So the first 10 years, go years. The next 10 years is the slow go years. So you're starting to age a little bit. Maybe you're running into a few more health challenges. Maybe you've done all the traveling and things you wanted to do, and you got that out of the way. But ultimately, you have this slow go period for another 10 years that you're starting to slow down, maybe not going out to dinner as much. And then the last 10-year segment, he refers to that as the no-go years. So, you're older, little more crankier, you don't want to be around people anymore. And so, you're not really doing much but staying at home. And so when you think about that, there's a lot to plan for, and it ultimately comes down to income being the starting point and the building block. And one of the things that we use here at Annuity Association to help kind of illustrate the mindset, or to build the frame of the picture for retirement and starting with longevity, we use a tool called the Longevity Illustrator. And tools like that are invaluable. And if you'd like, you can check it out on your own. It's a free tool. It's available online at www.longevityillustrator.org. And ultimately, what that does is it helps you see just how long your money really needs to last. And when I use this tool in our meetings, it really kind of opens the client or our prospect's eyes, because they don't really understand the probability that they may live past the age of 90. And longevityillustrator.org is a free website that's built by the American Society of Actuaries. And it's using actuarial science to build out that tool. And ultimately, what they're doing is pulling a large pool of people together and then determining, based on health and other things, other risk factors, what is the probability that someone aged 65 or whatever it might be will live to age 90. And what we have found in that research is that there's a 50% chance, if you're 65 years or younger today, there's a 50% chance that at least one of you in a married couple will live past the age of 90.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And if you're at that point, you might be wearing, I just realized I'm wearing my orthotic sandals. But
I don't even know what those are. So
they're the best things. So I don't remember. I had some lower back problems, and uh, somebody recommended these orthotic sandals, and I put them on and loved them. But yeah. So whether you're in your slow go or no go or go go phase, you might be wearing orthotic sandals like me.
yeah, we'll have to get a sponsor before we start talking
Dude, I
about
love that idea because
orthotic
these are not
sandals.
cheap.
What are they, like foam?
No, they're almost like those the Adidas sandals that we had growing up, where they had the little prongs like in them.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I
yeah.
remember this. Holy crap.
So, anyways, I digress. Yeah. So great point. So
You're
the
getting old, man. That's
longevity.
what that means.
What's that?
I said you're getting old, dude.
I don't need the reminder. I know it every time I see myself wearing these sandals. So,
Oh boy.
but yeah. So getting back to the subject here. Great tool that we use. I didn't know if we were going to take a look at it today or if you wanted to just mention it here, but really, really great tool that we use in our meetings. Something you can use on your own. So if that meant sitting down, spending some time with your accounts in front of you, considering how those may be affected, and if you want us to help you in that path, we can do that as well.
Can you see my screen, Zach?
Yeah, I got you. Yep.
Yeah. So this is the American Academy of Actuaries. This is the tool. So you just come in here, you hit Let's Begin. You can get a illustration of just yourself, or if you're married, you can do yourself and someone else. So in this case, we'll do a joint, and we're going to put in Zach here,
There we
Zachary
go.
Van S.
I'm already wearing the sandals. Why not?
And we're going to put that we'll just put his age, right? What are you, 39?
Yeah, dog.
And he's going to retire at 65. He doesn't smoke, right?
Nope.
Excellent health. And then his wife, Jennifer. How old's Jen? My age, right?
Yeah.
38.
Yep.
Excellent health. So then it gives you the results here, and it breaks them down to two different charts. It has this, I guess, what's that, a bar graph? And then it has just a regular spreadsheet down here. But what's interesting is it gives the probabilities when you hover over the different items here, the line items. But what's interesting, so let's go out to age 90. So right now it's saying that Zach at age 39 today has a 52% chance to live to age 90. But look at Jen, 62%. Like that's massive.
Yeah.
95, you have a 27% chance. Jen has a 37% chance. 109% chance, Zach. You might be a centennial or whatever they call them.
I gotta beat the system, man.
And then a 14%, 105. You have a 2% chance, dude. 4% chance for Jen. Now let's go back and edit the ages. Let's do someone that's more in line with like our client demographic.
Yeah.
So let's do like let's do a 65-year-old male and a 62-year-old female. Okay. We're going to update the result.
By the way, we recognize we're using an actuaries table here. So we recognize this isn't indicative of somebody's family health history. That, it's based on the information that we've got. It's a good general tool.
Yeah, of course. It's not considering hereditary things or, things like that. But it is what insurance companies use to issue life insurance policies. They're able to gauge the risk based on the probability of that pool of people similar in age and what the probability is that they may live to a certain age. So again, updating it now to where Zach is 65, Jen is 62. To age 90, Zach has a 43% chance if he's 65 today to live to age 90. It's a long time. I mean, that's 25 years of retirement planning that needs to be done. Jen is 54% chance. Like, that's massive. Even the 95, 20% chance if you're 65 today, Zach, 30% chance for Jen. So really cool tool. Again, you can go to www.longevityillustrator.org and take a look at it and play around and educate yourself.
Yeah, I just want to hit on one point that a little bit off subject here, but you had mentioned how these insurance companies use a tool like that. Had a meeting this morning and oddly a meeting yesterday. It doesn't always come up, but somebody was asking me, what kind of health screening do I need to do before getting an annuity? That question doesn't come up all the time, but worth addressing in that we're using these actuary tables but the insurance companies are using these actuary tables to come up with the numbers they're coming up with. So health screening isn't necessary for an annuity. Once we start looking at something like long-term care, it might be addressed then, but for what our primary book of business is and what we help most folks out with does not require that.
Yeah, that's a good call out there. And I have been asked that question multiple times. And it's an easy, like, I understand why people would ask that question, because they're like, well, how can the insurance company give me a guaranteed income? What if I live to age 100? Well, guess what? They know the probability of that happening. They know the likelihood of that happening or probability with a large pool of people. And they're able to assess that risk, but still offer it in a contractual guarantee because they're accounting for that.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the guaranteed income contract, is that you're transferring all of that potential risk, albeit maybe smaller. You're transferring it to them, and they're very good at what they do. But they also are accounting for that. There is a percentage of people that they issue annuities to that will live that long. And that is where you have to understand that's a tool. Annuities are a longevity risk mitigator. It is the number one tool to mitigate longevity. And why take on that risk when you can easily transfer it to a larger insurance company that has all these PhD experts in actuarial science that they can take it on and they can prepare and do all the things they need to do. But what you're doing is getting guaranteed income, which later on in this episode, we're going to talk about, and how that gives you do the James Bond music. It's going to give you a license to spend.
Yeah. Yep. No, great point. Great point. And we really hit on the longevity piece there, and awesome tool. I'm happy we're able to share that so that if somebody wants to take a look at it on their own, they can do that. Again, our objective here is to be transparent and unbiased in our approach. And we want to show you the tools that we use to get to the decisions and making the right choice for an annuity. But staying along with that longevity, we also want to consider that income piece to it. And it is important to remember that, the concept behind that Social Security that somebody may be receiving, it was never intended to be the sole income source at retirement, right? So it was really designed to be a supplement to pensions, which lucky you're beyond lucky if you've got a pension. So now that it kind of comes into that transition into potentially being an annuity that's combined with that Social Security.
Yeah, like Zach just said, that Social Security wasn't ever meant to be the only income source, and um, being that it was supposed to be supplemental in its form, and what it used to supplement was pensions, which are now largely extinct. In the article we're going to cover here later on in the episode, the recent statistic now of people that have pensions in the United States is less than 12%. So they're basically an extinct dinosaur. And I will tell you though, and we've talked about it on another episode, the happiest people have pensions or pension-like income because of the freedom and the license to spend. I keep plugging that in. I
I
like
love
that.
it, dude.
So, but when it comes to understanding now that we went as a society from pension to what we call a do-it-yourself retirement, which is kind of the mentality that people are taking on. And what we've found is that most people aren't prepared for that responsibility. They've got come to this conclusion and this like kind of fork in the road, right? That they've amassed this amount of wealth or nest egg, if you will, and they're at a crossroads because they don't know what to do exactly. And we're almost in a retirement crisis because of the lack of education on how to convert those assets to income. And you have all of these bias and influences from Wall Street telling you to keep your money in the market and that you earn a fair rate of return there and you're going to be fine and all of these things, but those things don't cover or account for the financial risk that we face. Sequence of returns risk is a real thing. And so because people haven't been taught how to make their money last and how to convert assets to income, um, we don't even know if retirement is truly promised anymore. Retirement used to be a promise made by your employer when you had a pension, but now it's a puzzle that you have to solve yourself, and that's a daunting task.
Yeah, yeah, and we see that. I think I don't want to necessarily say that we were forced into 401ks through our employer, but we're forced into finding a solution for that 401k that, there was no class that I took to help me plan for that. So now it becomes a task of our own to be educated, which is really what we help folks out with and getting that education to plan for that next step. And not for just themselves, but also for their spouse, right? So, how is this going to affect my husband, my wife, if I pass? Um, and the spousal planning, that's really what's most crucial, especially when we look at some of the stats that are out there that would suggest that 80% of men die married, while 80% of women die single.
That's huge. Can you say that again? I mean, that I
Yeah.
don't know if everybody heard that. That's a very impactful statement.
Yeah. Statistics show that 80% of men die married and 80% of women die single.
That's huge, and it's just a powerful reminder that women live 5 to 7 years longer on average, and so making income continuation part of the plan is essential. Like it has to happen. And using annuities and proper planning can provide peace of mind, knowing that surviving spouses have dependable income. I do have a chart here that I'll show real quick if I can find it. Um, that shows the kind of expected life expectancy chart out into the future, because that's only going to increase as advances in healthcare and uh, education around being healthy and all of these things continue to evolve. And now you talk about AI, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
saying that the impact AI is going to have on healthcare is so exponential
Yeah.
that people will live longer than ever before, because they're almost going to be like bionic people. Like AI is going to be able to manage things and keep people so healthy that you won't need to worry about dying as much from ailments that have been historically very life threatening. Here's the chart. Let me see if I can
Yeah.
get it to work here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So what this chart is doing is it's forecasting the life expectancy, and it's also showing what life expectancy was in the past. So if you come into, we're in 2025, so the life expectancy, and this is just the general average between a male and female, obviously. So, right now the average is between the 80 years of age to 82 and a half. But look what happens in 20 years. Out into 2040, that average age now is 85. We're talking about the median age. The average age is 85. That means 50% of that pool live longer than 85, and 50% live less than 85. But regardless, having a 50% chance to live that long is unbelievable. I mean,
Mhm.
my dad's dad, he passed away at like 63 years old. And that was in 1990. So, he obviously died young. But to think about it, age 85, that wasn't even probably imaginable, in my grandfather's era.
Yeah. Not that long ago.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago.
Yeah. Oh, I know
So,
it. No, that's great. And I think, we hit on the point of, spousal planning, and we see day in and day out the conversations that we have. If it's a couple involved, I mean, they're looking out for their spouse. And this is really what a lot of our conversations are centered around: is how can I take care of my husband or my wife if something were to happen to me?
it has to be thought about, and it is a significant risk, that we all face if we're married. Generally, with our demographic, the wife is a few years younger than the male, but not always. But either way, we should have a plan that addresses spousal continuation of income. The last thing that I know I would want personally for my wife would be, if something happened to me, that she has to figure out what to do now for income, and that there
Mhm.
would be a loss of income. We already know Social Security, the lesser of those two income streams, is going to be lost. So we already have a gap there, or a deficit that's created by that. But then if you don't have any other guaranteed sources, and you're relying on I don't know, a portfolio or something to generate income, now you're tasking that surviving spouse with the headache of trying to figure all of that out. And I know that the people I talk to, about 95% of the time, I hate to say that it's that high, but the female, the wife of the couple, never has anything to do with the finances when it comes to managing the portfolio or the income or the taxes or any of that. So you're putting that on her. That's a very daunting thing to do, especially during the most critical time in her life where she's losing her life partner. It's a time of mourning, not a time of worry. And we need to make sure as men, and I'm calling all of the men out there that may be listening to this, we need to do the right thing, and that's taking care of that woman.
Yeah, I think sometimes not saying that this is in every case. I think sometimes it's a little, this is what I manage in the house. This is what she manages. And we all tend to compartmentalize and have our places in our home. Um, but there's enough room in the financial home for both parties to know exactly what's going on and how to manage it. It should never be an ego driven purpose as to, I'm managing the finances, I'm going to take care of this, she knows I'm going to take care of this. All the
Yeah,
more
and
reason that both parties should know what's happening and how to manage it.
I agree. And I can't tell you too, and I hate to say this, how many times I have heard in meetings with with prospective clients, when we talk about this and the importance of having this planning in place to protect the surviving spouse, I have brought it up, and I'm just very direct with that question and say, look, what is our plan today to protect a surviving spouse in the event one of you predeceases the other? And a common like knee-jerk response generally by the male is, "Oh, she'll be fine. I mean, she'll have plenty of money. Like we have tons of assets and da 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 da." Or, I also hear sometimes she'll find a better looking younger guy that'll take care of her. Like I have heard that before. And I think it's a knee-jerk response. And to me, when I break down the psychology of that response, it's an uncomfortable thought for them. And that's why they say that. Yes, you may have assets. You may have money that she could fall back on, but is she going to know how? Is
Mhm.
she going to know where to get the money from? Is she going to have access to the account? Is she going to have a login? And I can tell you right now, at this very moment, I'm working with a lady who is a surviving spouse now of my former client who passed away earlier this year. He just passed away on February 9th. He was a doctor, and he died unexpectedly. He got some rare, like literally some rare disease that only like 200,000 cases have ever been documented in history. And it might even be less than that. That sounds kind of high. But, anyways, he died of this rare form of disease. And he died in like 4 months after being diagnosed. And this lady is just completely shell shocked. I can't even talk to her. Like I'm trying to help her through everything,
Yeah.
because he did have an annuity in place. Thank God for her and him. But he maybe, now that we're kind of talking about it, and I've been talking with her, and we now both believe that his name was Paul. That Paul knew he was not well. Like even before the diagnosis, I think he knew it, and that's about right when he started talking to me. Was just prior to the diagnosis. He
Mm.
didn't look very healthy when I first met him, and when I found out he was a doctor, he was real gray, and you can tell someone's health by their skin color and their eyes, the color of their eyes, the white part. And he had a very gray tone to his skin. And my mom's a nurse, so she's told me, like, when people look like that, that means their organs are failing, like something's wrong. And anyways, we now, her and I, the surviving spouse, his wife, we now both believe that he knew he wasn't doing well, and he put this annuity plan in place to protect her. But even with this piece of the puzzle, which is a critical piece, being there, she is in hysterics, dude. Like
Yeah.
she every time we talk, she's like lost her mind because she's now having to, we're right on tax season right now. So we're April 4th. So April 15th is tax time. She has no clue what to do for the taxes.
Yeah.
She says that, I've gotten some of the 1099 documents, but not all of them. And I don't know what to do. I don't even know half the accounts he had.
Yeah.
Um, she's stressing about what to do with the other parts of his portfolio. She has no logins to get into any of the accounts. Um, he apparently wasn't part of the, because they're retirement accounts, she wasn't even listed as a person that was authorized to speak to the custodian. So now she's had to provide the death certificate to get access. And all of this while in a time she's supposed to be mourning. She's panicking and worrying about what to do. And imagine your wife going through that and not having the income puzzle solved, not having an income annuity that's going to protect them.
Yep.
And this guy's a doctor. He's got plenty of money. But guess what? She doesn't know what to do. She's panicking. So I'm helping her through that. And I'm working with some of his rather advisors that he had for the rest of his portfolio, investment advisors. And man, that's been an interesting deal. But it's just a point, right? The point here is this needs to be part of the planning, and not just having the income annuity in place, but having a written plan, having logins and paperwork filed where, she's going to know where those documents are if you do pass.
Yep.
And we actually have a vault, a secure vault that we can use to upload documents and things to that are digitally secure and saved. So you don't have to worry about paperwork and all of that. But it's definitely something that needs to be part of the planning. And I've witnessed it firsthand more times than I'd like to on what happens to those surviving spouses. It's very sad and it's very trying.
Yeah. And to your point of the mission that we're trying to accomplish with some level here is just providing the knowledge and just making it to where this, granted, this process isn't easy, the grieving process, but if we can make one element of that something we don't have to consider as much, the financial piece of it, which is a big piece, or at least being prepared for it. And maybe that's another thing that we talk about another time of how to be prepared in a situation like this. But um, that's something that needs to be accounted for.
For sure.
Yep.
There's no doubt. So moving on to the final segment of our episode, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully you're still with us and we haven't bored you out of your mind. But the next segment here is some research, some supporting research to really educate everybody on why guarantees matter in retirement. And we're talking specifically to guarantees found in income annuities. So Michael Fink, again, a professor at the American College of Finance, industry leader in education and research on retirement income. And he wrote an article titled License to Spend. Here, let me cue the music. And License to Spend is compelling research out there that shows that there is indication that most retirees out there with guaranteed income sources, such as annuities, tend to spend more confidently in retirement compared to those relying solely on investments. Again, let me read that again. Retirees with guaranteed income sources, such as annuities, tend to spend more confidently in retirement compared to those relying solely on investments alone.
Yeah. And that study actually found that those retirees with a guaranteed income spend about twice as much each year as opposed to those without a guaranteed income. So really what it's doing is it's suggesting that with that reliable income stream that one can count on, it really just provides more financial security, but also the psychological freedom for us to be able to spend without any constant fear or depletion of the assets. So a big value component that comes with having that piece there, that peace of mind. We've talked about the psychology behind this and the value it brings to us to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, so real quick, I'd like to take a moment and read the abstract on this research, just to kind of highlight the points here. And basically, what happened was that they explored how the composition of retirement wealth is related to retirement spending, and found that retirees who hold a higher percentage in annuity income spend more than retirees with an equal amount of non-annuity wealth. So, in other words, having money in investments. This result is consistent with traditional economic theory that predicts risk-adverse retirees who do not know how long they will live should spend less than retirees who hold an equal amount of annuitized wealth. And with behavioral framing preferences that may make retirees more comfortable spending from income than assets. Marginal estimates indicate that investment assets generate about half of the amount of additional spending as wealth held in guaranteed income sources, which means that retirees could spend substantially more each year in retirement if they shift investment assets into guaranteed income wealth. The size of the effect suggests that the explanation for underspending non-annuity savings is likely both a behavioral and rational response to longevity risk. A survey conducted to test behavioral preferences toward income found that 59.4% of respondents would feel more comfortable spending on non-essential activities if giving $10,000 of additional income rather than $140,000 of wealth in a lump sum. So it's an interesting article there. I will share it in the show notes so everybody can download a copy of it. But it's really interesting to see that people that actually have an option to receive, when asked in a form of a survey question, right? If they would if they would rather receive more income than a lump sum of money, the majority chose more guaranteed income. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and again, to the point that it mentions there, just the willingness or ability to spend more outside of the everyday expenses that we're required to put out.
Yeah, 100%, man. And on top of all of that, there was some more research done. One of the sources was TIAA, and their research indicated that retirees receiving guaranteed monthly paychecks report being happier, healthier, and even more satisfied. And this just underscores the significant impact of financial security on overall well being. And most people in retirement associate financial security with income. Like, we
Mhm.
have to understand that financial security in retirement is associated with income.
Yeah, really what we're finding from more than one source is that that guaranteed income isn't just about finances, right? It's about actually enhancing the quality of life. And that's what we're seeing across the board from some key points that we're pulling up here. And really, the retirees with that income stream are more likely to spend their savings confidently and then just ultimately leading to more fulfilling retirement experience.
Yeah, if you just really think about it, right, when you break down the two phases of our financial life, you have that accumulation phase or the ascent up the mountain, again,
Mhm.
tying it back to that mountain climbing analogy. And then you have retirement on the descend. What is the primary driver of success for both of those phases in life? And it's the same thing. It's income, and where you're getting the income is the difference. And on that ascent, again, you're getting income from your employment, but on the descent, that employment income has been retired too. So where are you going to get it? And that's where really understanding that the reason people save for retirement is for income, and knowing that, hey, having a guaranteed source of income is just un unmatched in really the psychological benefits to people as they age in retirement, especially when you consider that overall most of us are going to slow down cognitively as we get older. And when you have guaranteed paychecks just hitting the bank every month, what is easier than that? I mean, think about it. Like, everybody, I mean, think about how good that sounds. Everybody would want that, especially as you start to age and slow down, and you don't want to have to worry about managing where your income's coming from.
Yeah, yeah. I just can't imagine. I've brought this up before, but waking up every morning, checking out the markets to see what kind of income I can spend within that month or the next year. Do we want to be making that decision at 76 or 78 years old or 80 years old? Do we want to be sitting down having to worry about that, or going out enjoying the grandkids or traveling the country, hitting up those national parks?
Absolutely. So, to wrap up today's critical conversation, retirement planning is fundamentally different from traditional financial planning. The stakes are higher, the risks are greater, and the approach must be specialized. And that's where we would advise anybody out there looking to work with an expert. We would love the opportunity to serve you and introduce you to the wide world of annuities and how they can ultimately benefit you in securing guaranteed income, and also be in the ability to show you how introducing a guaranteed income annuity to your overall retirement plan can create optimizations. It can create better outcomes, all while having more peace of mind, confidence, and a license, a license, a license to spend. And that's what we're talking about today, is license to
Right.
spend.
Yeah, just as a reminder, in the YouTube, in the description, you're going to see a couple links there. We'll include that one that we referenced, the longevityillustration.org. Of course, you'll see our link for our website. So if you do have questions, if you do want more information, check out the description. You'll have a link for our website.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with who we are annuityassociation.com. We are an independent annuity advisory firm that serves clients in all 50 states. We are a fiduciary acting in the best interest of our prospective clients to help them ultimately make better annuity buying decisions. We make a living selling annuities. So our hope and intent here is that by building trust and providing you the transparency and education you need to know that you were able to pick and hand select the right annuity for your circumstance, and you know exactly how it compared to the hundreds of others on the market, we hope that we can earn your business and that you will transact with us through our advisors. So Zach here is our senior annuity advisor. He does work actively with clients. So if you're interested in working with us directly, you can visit our website at annuityassociation.com. Right there on the main page, you can first start to request your free report to start our relationship, and we'll provide a report that will give you access to the highest rates, income quotes, carrier ratings, and more. And if you're actually ready to move forward, maybe you're already in the position to buy an annuity and you want to compare maybe one you've been looking at or whatever the case may be, here in the show notes, there will be a link to schedule your free annuity discovery meeting with Zach or one of our other advisors, and we'll be happy to see how we can help you. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, we are the Annuity Dudes, Jeremiah Conger and Zachary Van Ness, helping you secure your retirement with confidence. We are out.
See ya.
Chip.
Oh.